The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. George Bernard Shaw. Have you ever watched a family of elephants move through the savannah? Their powerful presence impossible to ignore, their steps creating tremors that ripple through the earth. Now imagine if one of those magnificent creatures stood perfectly still in the center of a family gathering, and somehow, mysteriously, everyone pretended it wasn't there. Meet Kesi, an elephant whose pain had become so enormous, so undeniable, that paradoxically, her family had learned to look right through her. Kesi hadn't always been invisible. There was a time when her family celebrated her gentle strength, her wisdom, her ability to remember the paths to water during drought seasons. She was the one who comforted younger elephants during thunderstorms, who knew which plants could heal and which should be avoided. Her presence had always been a source of comfort and stability for her herd. But slowly, quietly, something began to shift within Kesi. The weight she carried wasn't physical, it was deeper, heavier, more pervasive. Sleep became elusive, replaced by long nights of staring at stars that seemed dimmer than they used to be. The joy she once found in simple pleasures, splashing in watering holes, rolling in dust baths, sharing quiet moments with her family, began to fade like watercolors in the rain. At first, Kesi tried to communicate her struggle. She would move more slowly during migrations, hoping someone would notice and ask if she was all right. She would stand apart from the group, her massive frame silhouetted against the sunset, a living monument to sadness. Sometimes she would make soft, low rumbles, the elephant equivalent of calling out for connection, for understanding, for help. But something strange happened each time she tried to express her pain. Her family, who had always been so attuned to each other's needs, seemed to develop a peculiar form of selective attention. When Kesi's movements became sluggish, they would simply adjust their pace without acknowledgement. When she separated herself from the group, they would continue their activities as if her absence was planned. When she made those soft, pleading sounds, they would respond to every other noise in the savannah except hers. Kesi seems fine, her mother would say when distant relatives inquired about the family. She's just been quiet lately. You know how she is, always thoughtful. Her siblings developed an elaborate dance of avoidance, discussing everything except the obvious change in their sister. They would talk about the weather, food sources, memories from seasons past, anything to fill the air with words that didn't require them to acknowledge the massive presence of suffering standing right in front of them. The more visible Kesi's pain became, the more invisible she felt. It was as if her family had collectively agreed to participate in an elaborate magic trick, making a 3-ton elephant disappear through the sheer force of willful ignorance. They would step around her mood changes, navigate carefully past her obvious distress, and carry on conversations as if the most significant thing in the room wasn't slowly breaking apart in front of them. Kesi began to doubt her own experience. Maybe I'm overreacting, she would think. If it was really that serious, they would notice, wouldn't they? Maybe I'm just being dramatic. She started working harder to appear normal, to shrink her enormous pain down to a size that wouldn't disturb the family's careful choreography of denial. She perfected the art of being present in body while absent in spirit, of taking up physical space while making her emotional reality as small as possible. The family developed their own coping mechanisms. Kesi's mother threw herself into organizing herd activities with increased intensity. "We're all so busy," she would announce, as if constant motion could prevent anyone from noticing the stillness at the center of their family. Kesi's father began working longer hours, staying away from gathering places where quiet conversation might reveal uncomfortable truths. Her siblings learned to become suddenly fascinated by distant landscapes when everyone's pain became too obvious to ignore. This silent agreement to ignore the obvious created a peculiar kind of suffering for everyone. The family was exhausted from the energy it took to not see, not hear, not acknowledge. They developed a hypervigilance around avoiding certain topics, steering conversations away from anything that might accidentally illuminate the darkness they were all pretending didn't exist. They became experts at changing subjects, deflecting with humor, and maintaining a surface-level cheerfulness that fooled no one, least of all themselves. One evening, as the family gathered around the watering hole, something unexpected happened. Kesi's youngest nephew, Jabari, was playing too close to the water's edge and slipped, letting out a frightened cry as he struggled in the mud. Instantly, every adult elephant in the family rushed toward him, their protective instincts overriding everything else. In that moment of genuine crisis, their careful pretense shattered. As they worked together to help Jabari, Kesi found herself moving with the family, her pain momentarily forgotten in the face of immediate need. But as they pulled Jabari to safety, she noticed something profound. In this moment of real emergency, her family hadn't hesitated to act, to acknowledge, to respond. They hadn't looked away or pretended the problem didn't exist. "Why?" Kesi asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Can we run toward Jabari's crisis, but we spend all our energy running away from mine?" The question hung in the air like dust after a stampede. For the first time in months, the family stood still, really still, and looked at Kesi. Not through her, not around her, but directly at her. They saw what they had been so carefully avoiding: their sister, daughter, family member standing in the center of their lives, carrying a weight that was breaking her spirit, calling out for help in a voice they had trained themselves not to hear. Kesi's mother was the first to break. "I see you," she said, her voice cracking. "I've been seeing you this whole time, and I was terrified. I didn't know what to do, so I did nothing. I thought if I didn't acknowledge it, maybe it would go away, and I wouldn't have to feel helpless." One by one, the family began to speak their truth. They were scared of saying the wrong thing, of making it worse, of confronting their own feelings of inadequacy in the face of psychological pain. They had confused ignoring the problem with protecting themselves from it. They had mistaken silence for kindness, avoidance for respect. "I thought you wanted space," her brother admitted. "I thought asking would be intrusive." "I didn't know if it was my place," her sister said. "I kept waiting for someone else to address it first." "I was afraid of what you might tell me," her father confessed. "Afraid I couldn't handle hearing how much you were hurting." That evening became the beginning of a different kind of family dynamic. They learned that acknowledging Kesi's struggle didn't make it worse, it made it bearable. They discovered that talking about mental health didn't create problems, it created solutions. They found that their elephant-sized love was more than strong enough to hold space for elephant-sized pain. Kesi's healing didn't happen overnight, but it began to happen. With her family finally seeing her, really seeing her, she no longer had to carry the double burden of pain and invisibility. She could focus her energy on getting better instead of using it to prove that something was wrong. The family learned to ask direct questions. "How are you feeling today? What do you need from us? How can we support you?" They discovered that mental health conversations weren't as fragile as they had feared. They were actually quite sturdy, capable of holding honesty, fear, hope, and love all at the same time. If your family has an elephant in the room, someone whose pain has become so big that everyone has learned to look around it, remember Kesi's story. Remember that acknowledgement is the first step toward healing. That seeing someone struggle doesn't make you responsible for fixing it, but it does make you part of the solution. The elephant in the room isn't the problem. The problem is pretending the elephant isn't there. Your pain deserves to be seen. Your family's capacity for love is stronger than their fear of discomfort. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop participating in each other's invisibility. Because families, like elephant herds, are strongest when every member is truly seen, truly heard, and truly held. Subscribe to the channel for more wisdom from the Savanna of the mind and learn how to create space for the whole truth of your family's experience.